Mark was a young millionaire who lived a life full of ease and admiration, and he was used to people treating him like someone special because of his wealth and good looks from morning to night. He moved through the city with confidence and charm, knowing that attention followed him wherever he went. His friends praised his style, his influence, and the way he carried himself, and they believed nothing in the world was out of his reach. Mark enjoyed this image, and he believed he could achieve anything he wanted simply because he always had everything in his life felt like a game, and he played it with pride, thinking he would never face real consequences. One evening he sat in a luxurious rooftop restaurant with a group of friends, and the atmosphere was loud with jokes and laughter. They teased each other, showed off, and spoke as if life would always remain easy for them. A conversation began about relationships and beauty, and it slowly turned into a debate about Mark's taste in women. His friend Leo bragged that Mark could charm any woman he wanted because people admired him for his looks and money. Ryan, another friend, disagreed, saying Mark only chose women who were praised for outward beauty, and that he would never look at someone who did not fit his idea of perfection. Mark felt challenged, and his pride pushed him to respond boldly. He said he could marry anyone if he wanted, even a woman who did not match the unrealistic beauty standards people created. Ryan laughed and said Mark would never do that because he cared too much about his image. The table buzzed with excitement as Ryan suggested a bet. He told Mark to marry a woman who was plus-sized within 1 month to prove he was not shallow. Mark did not think about the seriousness of the words. He felt cornered by pride, and he agreed to the bet. His friends cheered loudly, thinking this was just another game for their entertainment. Mark laughed with them, but deep inside he felt unsure because he had never taken such a serious action on impulse. Still, he pushed the thought aside because he did not want to look weak in front of anyone. A few days later, Mark walked along a busy street when he noticed a woman standing outside a bakery talking gently to a child who looked upset. Her name was Rose, and she worked at a nearby community center. She had warm, expressive eyes and a kind smile that made people feel safe. Her presence carried a calmness, as if she brought peace wherever she went. Mark watched her from a distance, and something about her kindness struck him. Even before he remembered the bet, he walked toward her, planning to start a conversation, not for love, but because he wanted to win the challenge he had foolishly accepted. Rose noticed him, but she responded with simple politeness instead of excitement. She did not care about his expensive clothes or his confident walk. She just smiled kindly and asked if he needed help. He tried to impress her using the same charming tone he used with many others, but she did not react the way people usually did. She continued speaking to him in a calm, honest way, and he felt something unusual he was not used to. Anyone looking at him without admiration, and her normal response made him feel strangely exposed, as if she could see past the surface and did not care about the image he protected so carefully. Over the next few days, Mark returned to the same street, hoping to see her again. Each time she spoke to him, she treated him like an ordinary person and not someone defined by fame and money. She talked about her work at the community center, how she helped families who struggled, and how she believed every person deserved kindness. Mark found himself listening more than speaking, which was unusual for him. He felt drawn to her peaceful strength and the sincerity in her words. She made him think about things he had never considered, because his life had always revolved around status and attention. One afternoon he saw her writing notes for an event she was planning for children, and he sat beside her hoping to impress her again. He talked about his wealth, his business, and the things he owned, but she did not seem amazed. She asked him a simple question that stayed in his mind for days. She asked what truly made him happy outside of money and approval. Mark froze because he had no answer. He realized he had never asked himself that question. He always believed happiness came from admiration, but Rose made him see that his life lacked real meaning. He kept visiting her, and each day he uncovered more of her gentle character. She was patient with people who were struggling. She listened to everyone with respect, and she treated every person with equal warmth, whether they were rich or poor. She never judged anyone for their size, appearance, or background. Mark felt humbled by her way of looking at the world, and this feeling grew stronger each time they spoke. The bet began to feel heavy in his heart, because he knew he approached her for the wrong reason. Yet he no longer saw her as part of a challenge. She felt real in a way that scared him, because he had never let anyone reach this part of him before. As the weeks passed, Rose allowed him into her life slowly. She shared stories about her childhood, her dreams, and her dedication to helping people. She told him how she believed kindness could change a person much more than wealth or power. He listened with genuine interest, forgetting the role he usually played. He stopped showing off and started asking questions because he wanted to know her. He laughed at her little stories and felt comfort in her presence, like a world where he could breathe without judging eyes around him. For the first time, he felt seen, not for his status, but for the person he could become. Meanwhile, Mark's friends kept asking him when the wedding would happen. They treated everything like a joke and expected him to finish the bet soon. Mark felt sick listening to their remarks. He realized how immature and shallow the idea had been. He no longer wanted to win anything. He just wanted Rose to stay in his life. But he feared what would happen if she learned the truth. His guilt grew heavier, and he struggled with the decision of whether to tell her everything or remain silent for a little more time because he could not bear the thought of hurting her heart. One evening he stood outside the community center watching her help an elderly woman climb the steps. Rose held the woman's hand with care and patience, and Mark felt something shift inside him. Watching her, he realized she had more strength and goodness than anyone he had ever known. She turned and smiled at him with the same gentle warmth she always had, and he felt a tightness in his chest. He knew he could not hide the truth forever. He would soon have to choose between honesty and fear, and that choice would shape both of their lives in a way he could no longer control. Days kept passing, and Mark found himself thinking about Rose more than he wanted to admit. He woke up wondering how she was doing, and he ended his evenings hoping to see her smile again. He tried to remind himself that everything started because of a bet, but that thought now felt painful and foolish. Rose had become someone special, someone who touched parts of him he did not even know existed. Still, he was trapped between guilt and fear, and every moment with her made the truth feel heavier. The more he cared, the harder it became to speak the words that could break everything he had begun to build with her. Rose continued to meet him with kindness. She always listened with patience and responded with simple honesty. She asked about his work and his goals, but she did not care about the glamour around him. She only cared about who he truly was inside, and that made Mark feel both grateful and scared. He did not know how to be real because he had spent so long living behind a confident mask. Yet Rose made him want to change. She made him want to become someone better, someone who deserved the kind of gentle respect she showed to everyone. One afternoon, Rose invited Mark to visit the community center so he could see the place she talked about so often. She wanted him to understand why her work mattered and how every small act of kindness could change a life. Mark agreed and followed her into the building as children ran around laughing. The walls were covered with drawings and bright messages of hope, and the atmosphere felt alive. Rose introduced him to the staff and families, and they all treated him like an ordinary visitor, not a wealthy figure. They smiled and welcomed him because Rose trusted him, not because of who he was in the world. Mark felt something new inside him as he watched her move from person to person with gentle energy and a calm sense of purpose. Later she showed him a room filled with old books and supplies that needed organizing. She explained how they planned events for children and how they helped families facing difficult times. Mark listened carefully, and for the first time in years he felt the desire to help simply because he wanted to, not because it made him look good. He picked up boxes, helped her arrange shelves, and cleaned the space without complaining. Rose smiled at him with appreciation, and that smile felt like a reward he had never known before. When they finished, she thanked him and said she enjoyed having someone who did not judge the place for its simplicity. Her words made something inside him soften because he realized how many people overlooked the center due to its lack of luxury. They did not see the heart behind it, but Rose did, and now he did too. He walked out feeling changed, even though he could not fully understand the change yet. That evening he sat alone in his large modern apartment. The lights were bright, the furniture was expensive, and the view was stunning, yet the space felt empty. He realized he felt more alive in that small community center than in his own home. His friends sent him messages asking about the bet, but he ignored them because their words no longer mattered to him. He was beginning to feel something real for Rose, something deeper than he ever expected, and the bet felt like a shadow ruining every beautiful moment. The next morning he found Rose sitting by the lake where she usually spent quiet time thinking. She greeted him with a peaceful smile, and he felt a pull toward her. He sat beside her and asked what she was writing. She said she was planning a fundraiser event for the center because they needed money for new supplies. Mark listened and offered ideas silently, noticing how much passion she had for helping people. Rose told him every person deserved a chance at hope, and when she said it he wondered why. He had never thought that way before. He had spent his life chasing surface-level achievements while she built meaning with simple actions. They talked for hours, and Mark felt safe sharing thoughts he had never told anyone. He spoke about his childhood, how he always felt pressure to be perfect, how he feared being judged, and how he built a life that looked successful but often felt empty. Rose listened without interrupting, and her understanding expression made him feel lighter. He realized she did not care about his flaws or his mistakes. She cared about the person he could become, and that made him admire her even more. Over the next weeks, Mark began helping at the community center more often. He brought food supplies, he painted the old walls, he played with children, and he learned how to contribute without expecting applause. Rose watched him quietly, and she felt a warmth in her heart because she saw him making an effort to understand their world. She never asked him for money because she believed kindness was worth more than wealth, but Mark wanted to give both. He donated secretly through the center's website. Without telling her because he did not want her to think he was showing off, he just wanted the place to grow. Meanwhile, his friends became impatient and kept insisting he should finish the bet soon. They joked about it and laughed like it was entertainment. Mark felt disgust every time he heard their words. Now he could hardly stand to be around them because their attitude reminded him of who he used to be, shallow, careless, and unaware. He avoided their gatherings and focused on Rose because she made him feel like he had a real purpose. He knew he had to tell her the truth, but the fear of losing her held him back. One rainy evening, Rose asked if something was troubling him. She noticed he looked uneasy, and she gently placed a hand on his arm to comfort him. Mark felt his chest tighten. He wanted to tell her everything right then, but his throat felt blocked. He simply said he was thinking about his life and trying to understand what truly mattered. Rose gave him a soft smile and said, "Everyone goes through moments of confusion, and it is good to question things, because answers help people grow." Her words hit him deeply because she did not know that he was carrying a secret that could hurt her deeply. As nights passed, the guilt continued to grow inside him. He could not sleep easily because he kept imagining the moment she would learn the truth. He knew she trusted him, and he had begun to trust her too. He had never felt this kind of connection with anyone before, and that made the fear even stronger. But he also knew honesty was the only way forward, because the longer he waited, the harder it would become. Then the day arrived when Rose invited him to join her at a gathering for the center families. She wanted him to see the gratitude of the community he had silently helped. Mark watched the joy on children's faces and the hope in their parents' eyes. His heart swelled as he realized how precious the work was and how much he wanted to be a part of it. All his feelings for Rose were now undeniable, and he knew he could not build a future with her on a lie. As he stood beside her watching the event unfold, he felt that the moment to tell her everything was coming soon. He could not carry the weight any longer, and he knew the truth had to be spoken, even if it broke his heart. Mark woke up the next morning with a feeling of heaviness pressing on his chest. He knew he could not keep hiding the truth from Rose because every new moment with her made the guilt sharper. He looked around his apartment and realized nothing in his world felt right anymore. The rooms were large and clean, yet empty of warmth. The silence felt heavier than usual because his heart was full of thoughts he had avoided for too long. He understood that if he wanted anything real with Rose, he needed to be honest, even if the truth destroyed the growing connection between them. Later that day, he went to the community center hoping to find her. He saw her inside helping a mother carry a box of clothes, and she greeted him with her gentle smile that always calmed him. He tried to smile back, but his expression felt forced. Rose noticed the tension in his eyes and asked if everything was fine. Mark said yes, but his voice did not match his words. She did not push him. She simply asked him to join her once she finished helping the family. He nodded and waited near the entrance, feeling the weight of his secret growing heavier with each passing second. When she finally sat with him on a bench outside the center, she looked at him with concern. She said he had seemed distant all morning, and she wondered if he wanted to talk. Mark felt his heart pounding, and he opened his mouth to speak, but the words did not come out. He instead said he needed some time to gather his thoughts. Rose nodded with understanding, and told him she would be there when he felt ready. Her patience made him feel even more guilty, because she trusted him without knowing what he was hiding. He wanted to protect her from hurt, but hiding the truth was hurting her in a different way. Over the next few days, Mark avoided his friends completely. He did not want their jokes or reminders of the foolish bet. He spent time alone thinking about everything he had done and everything he had become since meeting Rose. He realized she had shown him a version of himself he had never known, a version that cared about others, a version that wanted to grow, a version that wanted real love, not admiration. But he also knew that love built on a foundation of lies could not survive. He needed to tell her soon or risk losing her forever. One evening he saw Rose at the lake sitting with her notebook. As the sun began to set, she looked peaceful, but her eyes carried a quiet worry. As she saw him walking toward her, she closed her notebook and waited. As he sat down beside her, Mark took a deep breath and said he needed to talk about something important. She folded her hands in her lap and listened with full attention. He looked at the water, unsure where to begin because every sentence felt painful to form. He finally told her the truth, that he had approached her because of a careless bet, a foolish promise made to impress friends who never respected anything that mattered. He told her he agreed to marry a plus-sized woman within a month, just to prove he was not shallow, and he admitted that he had been wrong from the start. His voice shook as he spoke because he feared each word would pull her further away. He said he felt ashamed and that he should have never allowed pride to lead him into something so hurtful. Rose listened silently, and her expression slowly changed from calm to hurt. She pulled her hands together, and looked down as if trying to understand everything. She asked him why he let it go on for so long, and Mark felt like his heart was breaking. He told her he never expected to care for her. He said meeting her changed everything, and he began to see her not as part of a bet, but as someone who brought meaning to his life. He confessed that he fell for her kindness, her strength, and the way she made him question who he was inside. He said he wanted to tell her sooner, but fear held him back. Rose took a long breath and said she needed time to think. Her voice was steady, but he could hear the disappointment beneath it. She said she cared for him, but she could not ignore the fact that everything began with a lie. She explained that trust was important, and she was hurt because he let the lie grow. Even after he started developing feelings, she stood up slowly and told him she needed space to understand how she felt. Mark stood too and asked if there was anything he could do, but she shook her head gently and walked away, leaving him standing alone near the lake. The days that followed felt long and heavy for Mark. He tried sending her messages, but she did not respond. He visited the community center, but she was always busy or not there. He realized he had damaged something precious, and he feared it might never heal. His friends tried to reach out, but he ignored them because he no longer wanted a life that encouraged careless cruelty. He spent his time thinking about how to prove he had changed, not just for her, but for himself. He wanted to show her he valued kindness more than pride, and that he was willing to become someone better. Meanwhile, Rose struggled with her feelings. She had grown close to Mark because she saw sincerity in him, and she believed in the good inside him, but learning the truth wounded her heart. She felt embarrassed, hurt, and unsure if she could trust him again. Yet she also remembered the moments when he helped at the center without asking for anything, the time he listened to her dreams and fears, and the way he started questioning his own world because of her. She knew he had changed, but she did not know if change was enough to erase the pain. After a week, she saw Mark standing outside the community center holding boxes of art supplies for the children. He did not try to talk to her. He simply carried the boxes inside, helped arrange them, and left quietly. She noticed he was helping in silence, almost as if he wanted to show he cared without expecting forgiveness. She watched him from a distance and saw something different in him. His actions were no longer loud or impressive. They were quiet, thoughtful, and humble, and that made her heart soften slowly. A few days later, the fundraiser event approached, and Rose was overwhelmed with preparations. Mark arrived early and asked if she needed help. She hesitated, but she finally nodded. He spent the entire day hanging decorations, moving tables, directing families, and doing whatever was needed without drawing attention to himself. Rose watched him move with quiet effort, never once complaining, and never trying to impress anyone. He seemed sincere in every step, and it made her question whether she had been too strict in closing her heart completely. During the event, a child ran up to Rose holding a small painting and said, "Mr. Mark bought new brushes for us, and we love them." She looked at the painting and saw the happiness in the child's eyes. She turned to Mark, who was across the room helping an elderly man find a seat. She felt something soften inside her again, because she realized Mark was not helping for show. He was helping because he wanted to be part of something meaningful. At the end of the evening, Mark approached her carefully. He did not try to touch her or force a conversation. He simply thanked her for allowing him to help. Rose looked at him for a long moment. The hurt was still there, but so was a quiet hope. She told him she still needed clarity, but she could see he was trying to change. He nodded and said he understood completely. He promised he would give her all the time she needed, and he would not pressure her. As he walked away, Rose realized her heart was not angry anymore. It was simply unsure and healing. She wondered if giving him another chance might lead to something real, something stronger than the lie that started everything. She knew the decision would shape their future, but she also knew she needed to think deeply before choosing. The fundraiser event ended, but the feeling in the air stayed with Rose for many days. She kept remembering the way Mark moved through the crowd with humility, how he helped the children, how he supported families without trying to take credit, and how he respected her space without pushing himself into her life. These memories mixed with the hurt she still carried and left her standing between two paths. One path led to protection and distance, while the other led to forgiveness and possibility. She knew she had to choose carefully because her heart mattered and trust needed healing before it could open again. A few days later, Rose sat at the lake where she usually went to clear her mind. The air was calm, the water reflected the soft sky, and birds moved slowly across the surface. She held her notebook, but she was not writing anything. Her thoughts were too full. She remembered the early days when Mark first approached her, and how she never expected him to become such a part of her life. She remembered the way he looked at her with sincerity after confessing the truth, and how broken he seemed when she walked away. Her heart hurt again, but in a different way, because she knew he had changed since then. Mark, on the other hand, spent the days trying to rebuild himself quietly. He focused on the community center, on helping families, and on finding meaning in the small things. He wanted to prove that his change was real, not just a reaction to guilt. He stayed away from parties and from the friends who encouraged the bet. He even told them he did not want to be part of their group anymore because he saw how empty their world was without kindness. They laughed at him and said he was acting strange, but Mark did not care anymore. He wanted a life that felt true, and he wanted to deserve the feelings he had developed for Rose. One morning Rose was surprised when she saw Mark painting a wall outside the community center with a group of volunteers. He wore simple clothes, his hands were covered in paint, and he laughed softly with the children who tried to help. He looked so different from the confident man she first met that she felt a tug in her chest. She walked closer, and he noticed her, but he did not rush toward her. He smiled gently and continued helping the children arrange the paint brushes. She felt something warm in her heart because she understood he was no longer trying to impress her. He was simply being himself, and that self was someone she could respect. She stayed to help the volunteers, and throughout the day she observed him quietly. He moved with patience, he listened to every person who spoke to him, and he carried heavy boxes without complaint. When the work ended, he walked to her slowly, as if he did not want to disturb her. He thanked her again for allowing him to help, and prepared to leave. But this time Rose stopped him. She asked if he had a moment to walk with her. He looked surprised but nodded, and they walked toward the lake together in silence. When they reached the water, she asked him how he had been, and Mark answered with honesty. He told her he had been trying to understand himself, and trying to become a person who valued people, not pride. He said he had let go of the friends who encouraged the bet, and he no longer wanted a life that made him feel empty. He looked at her with sincerity, and said he was not asking for forgiveness quickly. He only hoped she could see the change in him. Rose listened quietly, and her heart softened with each word because she could see the truth in his eyes. He was not the same man who approached her for a careless challenge. He was someone who had grown through pain and reflection. Rose finally spoke and told him she had been thinking about everything that happened. She said she felt hurt, but she also saw the goodness in him that had grown naturally. She reminded him that trust did not heal in a moment, and he agreed with a gentle nod. She took a deep breath and said she was willing to give their connection a chance, but slowly she wanted honesty, patience, and respect. Mark felt tears sting his eyes, not from sadness but from relief and gratitude. He promised he would never hurt her again, and she believed him because she had watched him change, not through words but actions. The following weeks brought new beginnings for them. They spent time together at the community center, helping with activities, planning events, and supporting families. Rose let her guard down little by little, and Mark respected every boundary. She saw how he made children laugh with small jokes, how he stayed late to help fix shelves, and how he listened with real care when families shared their struggles. She realized he had become someone who cared deeply, and she admired him more each day. One evening, as the sun set over the lake, Mark invited Rose to walk with him. The sky was painted with soft colors, and the air felt cool and gentle. They walked quietly until Mark stopped near a bench where they first had a serious conversation. He said this place reminded him of the moment he almost lost her. He looked into her eyes and said he wanted to build a future with honesty and kindness. He told her that he wanted to earn her trust completely, and he was ready to spend as much time as needed to do so. Rose looked at him with warmth and said she believed he meant every word. She felt her heart opening again because she saw the sincerity in his voice and the maturity in his actions. Over time their bond grew stronger. They laughed more, they talked openly, and they shared moments that made them feel connected in ways neither expected. Rose introduced him to more families, and Mark shared ideas on how to improve resources for the center. They became a team working together with respect and understanding. Soon the community began to notice how well they balanced each other, Rose with her gentle compassion and Mark with his new sense of purpose. It felt natural and right. One day the center arranged a small celebration to thank volunteers and donors. During the event, one of the children ran up to Mark and Rose holding a handmade card. The child said, "You make everyone here feel happy." Rose smiled warmly, and Mark felt his heart swell with emotion because he never expected to hear such words from anyone in his life. He thanked the child, and Rose saw the softness in his expression. She reached out and gently held his hand, and for the first time he felt whole. Soon after the celebration, Mark invited Rose to a quiet dinner at a small place she liked. He did not choose a fancy place like he used to. Instead, he chose a simple, warm restaurant with soft lights. At the end of the dinner, he took a deep breath and told her he had something important to ask. He told her he wanted a life with her, not because of a challenge, not because of pride, but because she had shown him what real love looked like. He said she changed his heart and helped him grow into a better version of himself. Then he asked if she would marry him. Rose felt tears fill her eyes, not from sadness but from the beauty of the moment. She saw the sincerity, the growth, and the love in his eyes. She realized he had become someone she could trust, someone she could walk beside without fear. She said yes, and Mark could not stop his smile from spreading across his face. Their wedding was simple, warm, and filled with people from the community center. Children danced, families cheered, and everyone felt joy in the air. Rose walked toward Mark with a peaceful glow, and he looked at her with deep love. He realized he never won a bet. He gained something far greater. He gained a partner who taught him the meaning of real kindness and real love.